Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by Mike Smith, award-winning director Brian Redondo, and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. This is episode 34, and on today's show, Mike brings us a new segment that I enjoyed immensely, and we look back at Loki and the state of MCU's Disney Plus shows so far. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund. Someone play around in GarageBand, creates a little.
I have a friend who does that. He might be worth getting to do a jingle.
Okay, all right. How much we got to pay him? Can we pay him in like Popeyes?
I don't know.
Can we pay him in shout-outs on a podcast no one listens to?
I don't know. I'll talk to him.
Okay, all right.
He might
good.
take money, but I don't know. We'll see.
He might take money. He probably takes money. Most people take money.
All right.
Except the anti-capitalists.
1024,
Ready?
let's
What do
go.
they take?
Okay.
What do anti-capitalists take?
Drugs.
Yeah, there's a better joke in there somewhere.
All right. Well, welcome back to the
Government handouts. That's what they take.
There you go. Welfare.
Welcome to the new Freedom Party podcast. That's what we're calling this. We're getting into our first segment, and this is going to become a recurring segment. It won't be every week, but it'll be fun. Little ones, close your ears, because this segment from known hater Mikhail Smith is called Shit Mike Hates. So, Mike, what is the shit that you're hating this week?
All right, so let me paint this picture for y'all here. So, I think it's been pretty clear from 34 episodes that I am not immune to hype. I typically buy into hype. I project hype. I am hype. Typically this works well, and things that people enjoy, I enjoy to a more intense degree. So that's cool. But there is a dark side of this, another side of a coin, per se. It's that when I get hyped about something, or people in my life whose opinions I typically agree with get hyped about something, and then I cannot get into it. I typically just try and keep watching or playing and just like, I'm going to get into it eventually. And it is a really frustrating feeling. What I'm experiencing that now is BoJack Horseman.
Do you think it's a form of FOMO almost?
I don't know if it's like FOMO, because it's like, I'm not thinking about like other people. It's just like, I want to like this and I don't like it. So maybe it's like, is deep-seated FOMO. But I really don't know. I think it's more so a projection of just me consistently being hyped about things, or, really going from one end of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah.
I have
it's
kept
like
watching this show. Like, so many people love this show, like almost like it at the Rick and Morty level, like we were talking about. Like, I do feel like people feel that way about this show, and that like, and I think this show does try more than Rick and Morty to like have a deeper meaning. Like, our friend Alan came in while I was watching it one time. He was like, "Oh, you're watching the depression show, huh?" And then everybody's
Right.
like, "Oh, it's not really a comedy. Like, but like, it just doesn't click for me. I don't know what it is. Like, there's a lot going on in the show. Like, there's obviously the animal parts of it, and I'm not going to explain the premise because it's been out forever. It's really popular. The animal stuff, okay, that's kind of weird. The Hollywood stuff, okay, that's kind of weird. And then like all the really sad depression, addiction kind of stuff. And for some reason, like the intersection of those three things, it just doesn't do it for me. And I'm about like 7 episodes in. I'm also someone that is always like, you got to give it a few episodes. Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, you got to give it a second. I gave it a second. It's just not clicking for me. Like, so many people I really am down with, like, love this show, and it's really irritating to me because I love sad shit. Everybody knows that about me. I'm a known sad boy. Why is this not working for me? Like, what is wrong with me that this sad show is either too sad or not sad enough? I just don't get it, and I'm getting worked up. So what I wanted to hear was from y'all, Have you ever had an experience? And I'm not just talking about like I want to like it but I can't, but that I am keep ham-fisting it into my brain out of an effort to like it. Wes, I think you had one that you're
so
probably gonna
I
get
don't
ripped for.
No way. This is very clearly the same idea. So, except it's not with shows because I think give up on shows. Like I never gave Breaking Bad a real chance. I think I stopped after episode 1.
What a shame.
Dang, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get into it. Succession. I think I did give Succession a try, but I think I still only gave it like 3 or 4 episodes, and I'm just like I can't keep watching this show that like makes me feel like I need to clean myself in bleach after every episode.
But that's different because you don't feel like you should like that show. Like I'm pretty sure I said Success when I was talking about Succession. I'm like, that is not a Wesley show. In fact,
well,
like half
but I think I started watching. Yeah, but I started watching before you had talked about it.
Okay.
But you
but
got
maybe
pulled
you
in by
knew
the
me-
zeitgeist, is what.
But
Yeah.
I'm talking specifically something you want to like, something you are
Okay.
trying to like, you are putting in the hours, and you are not getting any return here.
It aligns with your interests.
So I got a good example. So I bought some running shoes about a year ago. Maybe like 8 months ago. It doesn't matter the time. The point is, I bought some Asics. I went to the running store, and I was like, guys, I'm in these shoes. I think they're called the GT 2000s. They're called the 7 because it's the 7th model. Can I just get these? They work. They're good for me. And they're like, well, we don't really stock that one. We tend to find that like for the same kind of shoe, we actually get better durability and performance from this other shoe. It's a little bit more expensive. Same brand, everything. It's called the, Gel Cayenne, whatever, da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, fine. So I try it on and it seems fine. Maybe a little bit narrow, but I was like, it's fine. I know it's by Asics. It should be exactly the same. I take it for a run. And at first it was okay. First mile, no problem. Second mile, though, it feels kind of tight around my arch, and this happens to me sometimes. My left foot is a little bit weird. Who knows? I don't know.
Who knows?
And I keep running on it. And then by mile 3, I'm now starting to get a blister in my left foot. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, why am I getting a blister? It's the same freaking shoe I've been running on for the past 2 years, or same brand. Why would it change? Why did they change the way that it's shaped around my foot? I don't get it. But I'm like, you know what? I just need to break it in. So I'm running some more. Every time I run, as soon as I get to mile like 2.5 or 2, start getting that blister again. Like, this is crappy. Maybe I'm tying my shoe wrong. So I tie my shoe a little bit different. Look up all the like how to do different, lacing patterns. So I change it up. Go running. Nope, still mile 2, get the blister, and my left, arch hurts. And by the time I really figured out, what, this is probably not the shoe for me, it had already been like 2 months or 3 months, and I couldn't return the shoe at that point. So guess what, guys? Still running on this shoe that hurts my foot, and I've had it since at least January.
Oh, wow. That's like the physical manifestation of my self-flagellating watching a show I don't like. You're physically torturing yourself. Brian, is this what
hate
your 30s are
yourselves?
like? Is this what your 30s are like?
You just gotta keep eating that shit. Just spoon it into your mouth, taste it, and swallow. Repeat.
Like, I'm just watching a show I don't really like, and it's like tolerable, like a 6 out of 10 experience. Wesley is physically hurting himself.
Why don't you get another shoe, player?
Also,
They're expensive. I don't want to pay for more shoes.
one thing I've learned from the show is that Wes has really sensitive feet, man. Like, what's going on over there? You gotta wear like orthopedics or something?
The
They're
prescription
delicate.
Bro,
size.
I am so scared of my mortality lately, like turning almost 30, and now I'm so much more just terrified of getting old. Just from that being the problems I'm faced in my life.
I mean, you already act like an old dude.
Yeah, first
Yeah,
of all,
yeah.
I don't.
I mean, you're
running
day one
hurts my
crotchety.
lower back, so I never even try running. So I do applaud you for doing that. But god damn,
It's so dumb. I should have just gotten new shoes and bit the
You
bullet.
still
but,
can.
I will.
yes, I believe this is called the sunken cost fallacy.
Yeah, this
except
is
you're physically wounding yourself.
Yeah. If day one the shoe didn't fit, like I got shoes I've worn, Wes, and I was like, oh yeah, this don't really quite fit right. And then that was it. I just stopped wearing the shoe, or I found someone to
wasteful.
give it to.
That's
I
wasteful.
was like, hey, I got this size
Wesley-
12. You want this? Cool. All right.
You are a homeowner that has 2 bathrooms and double sinks.
His
in
and
at least
hers.
one of those bathrooms,
Yeah, you can
maybe
get
both.
some shoes.
You can get some shoes, buddy.
Jesus Christ.
Maybe that'll be on the list for this weekend. With back to school coming up, so maybe I need to get some new shoes.
So that's a pretty basic one. So I do want to hear from Brian next, because there's one on this. You wrote a few things, which I do appreciate. I think either walk us through all of them, but I think we all know there's one, particularly me as a hype beast, is already turning red over.
and I put it on my list for that reason. But I will say there's a distinction between with what Wes is going through and what Mike is going through. Mike is talking about
Wes is just an idiot.
Other people hyping him up. And
True.
wondering why he's not into something that other people are hyping him up for. Whereas you just got a problem with shoes. But I do agree with Mike. I've had a lot of problems with this. I'm with you on BoJack Horseman. I'm a film guy. I love excruciating film experiences. I sat through a 3.5-hour documentary about the New York Public Library where nothing happens. Like, that's the kind of shit that I'm into. I could not, for the life of me, get into BoJack. I tried multiple times, fell asleep multiple times. It's just not clicking. Same thing with the show Fleabag on Amazon Prime. Also, like, a very lauded comedy show. I've had people tell me, like, oh, it's perfect. It's so well written. The actress is incredible, right? Like, all these Emmy nominations and stuff. And I'm a hype boy for awards, which says something about me. And so I'm like, ooh, awards, a golden statue. Like, no, that show sucks. I hate Fleabag. As a child, people got me hyped up for Ren and Stimpy so hard, and like another show, I couldn't get into it. I was like, why is everybody into this crude humor? Why are there all these close-ups of boogers and stuff? Not for me. But I think the one that Mike wanted to get to is a recent one, and something I've been hyped up because of you guys, who have plugged this game pretty well on the show.
And awards. Let's be clear.
An award-winning and highly critically acclaimed thing. Another thing I'm really into is Metacritic. So if it's got a high Metacritic score, I got a rager. So Ghost of Tsushima.
Bleep that out.
Ghost of Tsushima, which I've had for a few months now, and I haven't mentioned it on the show.
Yeah, you haven't.
I haven't mentioned it on the show because I don't want to disappoint you guys.
Dude, I disappoint people on this show all the time.
You guys were really into it. Well, I'm a people pleaser, Savon.
Yeah, Savon, you are not a people pleaser. That's a different.
You're contrarian.
Savon has actively said, "I refuse to feel shame." So
Savon's inner monologue is just those people. And so with Ghost of Tsushima, I have played it. I understand what the hype is about. It's got this like lush environment, beautiful cinematics, interesting combat, and it's a samurai tale. I'm all about Kurosawa and those old school samurai movies. But the game is just like slow and kind of boring, and I'm not into the characters, and actually those cutscenes, they're always from really far away. They never zoom into anybody's face for some reason, and I think it's part of the thing that's like disconnecting the game for me. And I just recently finished God of War finally. And to go from like God of War to something like Ghost of Tsushima is just such a letdown. And I keep trying over and over to play it. And even Anna, who like sits next to me as I play, really loves the experiences. I was like, when are we going to go back to Tsushima? I want to see more of Tsushima. I'm like, well, I want to play Super Mario instead, because that always delivers. And it's just one of those things where you want to love something, but you can't get over the wall.
I appreciate the comparison to God of War, because in God of War, like every second of that game is very intentional and like contributes to the bigger part of that story, or just like the whole experience of that game. There's so much nonsense in Ghost of Tsushima, like the fact that the little birds pop up every 2 seconds to take you somewhere to get a meaningless headband, and the kind of flat characters. So I do get that. I guess it just makes me sad, Because it's like, that's some shit I feel like you would like. It's so beautiful. It's
be.
so cinematic. Ugh.
So, Brian?
It definitely should be, but there's something lacking that I can't get past.
So you know, Brian, and again, I like the God of War comparison too, because even the side quests in God of War that you don't have to do, you still get lots of dialogue and development between Kratos and Atreus, which that's why I like doing side quests in that game. Ghost of Tsushima, you go to a village, talk to a woman, you think it's a cool thing. It's actually just a bandit that killed her dad. You kill him, and then that's it. And I'm like, oh, well, that wasn't interesting. They sold that as like a side quest, and that was like, I've had random encounters that were more dynamic. I do think that Ghost of Tsushima suffers and benefits from the same thing that makes Red Dead a good game, because I think the criticisms are actually similar, which is that something can be beautifully put together, well crafted, attention to detail, and it's more of a piece of art than something that's fun to experience, because those are two different things.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest difference between Ghost of Tsushima and Red Dead, though. Red Dead is just fun. It is fun to ride around and meet all these random characters and get into shenanigans and stuff and, shoot up whatever. And I don't know.
The funny thing is the combat
as a samurai.
The combat in Red Dead is not that good. Like, the actual gunfighting is not that good, but everything else around it is phenomenal. Tsushima's the opposite, where the sword fighting is so cool, and then, like, everything else is just kind of plain.
I mean, that's Rockstar Games. They've never had good combat, but what makes the games good is that they have good, just larger world that's fun to play in, even if it's not quality. But sorry you feel that way, bro. But also, no, right. Don't be sorry.
I'm sorry. I wonder who's more upset, Brian or me?
It's a confluence there. All right. So that'll wrap up our new segment, recurring segment, Shit Mike Hates. And there was lots of cursing in that segment. Sorry to all you parents out there having to explain to your kid what a rager is. All right. So it's been a bit. We're in between some shows right now. We're actually in kind of a lull, I'd say, in terms of like our normal media content, the Marvel world, the Star Wars world. Sorry, Bad Batch. And so we thought we'd take a minute to just kind of like look back and as a big picture idea of the Marvel shows that have been put out on Disney Plus, right? I mean, this is something that's never really been tried in this very intentional high production way before by any of these like DC, or Marvel. I mean, I think maybe you could make the argument for like the Arrowverse, but the Arrowverse is such a lower like level of quality that it just doesn't. It's not even close, right? And Marvel's sort of done things with like the on the ground folks like Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, but those didn't maybe push the whole like phase 1, 2, or 3 forward in the way that these shows are doing. So we're gonna talk back. We also realized we didn't actually end up talking about the end of Loki. So real quick, I just wanted to hear your guys' takes. What's one thing you liked about Loki episode 6 and how that series wrapped up? For me, it was totally Jonathan Majors' performance. I've never seen him before in any shows. I didn't watch Lovecraft Country. I thought it was wacky. It was weird. At first, I was like, oh, I don't know if I like it. But then he just like leaned into it and just had no inhibitions about being this weird, wacky dude. And because of the way the ending happened, spoiler alert for all of you who haven't seen it, sorry about that, but not sorry. Like, I'm wondering and I'm thinking we're probably going to see a totally different performance the next time we see him because we're going to see one of his variants. So supposedly we're going to see him in Ant-Man 3 Quantumania. So that's what I took away from it. That was like really cool and fun. Just love seeing him like live in his little castle space and eat up the air in the room and just like really live in that I don't want to call it space, but just live in that character and really own it in a very different way than like Heath Ledger owns the Joker performance, but it feels that way. It's like he's just 100% committed to like how he's playing this character, and I loved seeing him just like really lean into that. Mike, what do you think? What was good about Loki 6?
So I think Brian had the best kind of commentary on this, and it was
so per you just go to him.
I guess I kind of want to go last because I think my feelings about Loki are going to connect to kind of what's next and what came before it.
Redondo.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Kang the Conqueror. They don't call him by name, but he sure as alludes to it. And he's definitely Kang. And I was wrong. He's not Korean. he's actually black. Even better. That's so
Not
cool.
Han.
What
It's
a
not the Fast
twist.
and the Furious crossover there.
No, and John, I mean, you're totally right. Jonathan Majors' performance is scene stealing. It's show stealing, even. Great character actor through and through. Everything he's been in, he knocks it out of the park. And I'm so excited to see the other versions of Kang that start to invade the MCU. And to me, it's like finally we get a really, really fun, delicious villain who's just teeming with personality and character and kind of off the wall. I think MCU has typically had this problem with a lot of their villains feeling very flat, whose motivations are neither here nor there, and basically just serving as mirrors to the heroes that they fight against. But
Ronan, the accuser, we're looking at you.
Oh yeah, well, like what a waste. But here we finally have Kang the Conqueror. He's, we're going to be presented with many different personalities of this guy. Different ambitions from the various Kangs, and Jonathan Majors is the actor that can pull it all off. And so I'm just excited to see where the MCU takes this all. But I will say the same strength of the end of Loki is also its biggest flaw.
Right.
Because they spend so much time setting up Kang. They spend so much time just focusing on Jonathan Majors delivering this monologue, a villain monologue. That's like the worst comic book trope of all time, and they're milking it. And he's doing a great job for what it is. However, to put that at the very climax of our 6-episode arc, in which we've seen this Loki, go from bottom all the way to the top where, he's in love with Sylvie, to have it just be capped off by a new character entirely who eats up probably 20 minutes of the show while our two protagonists, Loki and Sylvie, just sit idly by listening to him with really no back and forth to offer in that conversation, really no tete-a-tete. Nothing that we've come to expect from Loki really bubbles up in that episode. That in itself was hugely underwhelming, and it does a disservice to the time we spent with Loki, which to me was an amazing show through and through up until the landing.
We are confirmed.
Wait, I have a joke. Why would you want your characters to be boob to boob, tete-a-tete? Why?
What?
Nice try, Wes.
What does that even mean? What did you just
try.
say?
Brian said that they would be tete-a-tete, which is head-to-head in French. But
yes, explaining it,
like,
more makes it funnier.
Tit to tit,
it really
so
does,
boob
Wes.
to boob.
Right, you can't fix that in post. You cannot fix that in post. I think one thing that makes this a little different is that the past 2 shows ended and that was it. They have confirmed a 2nd season of Loki. So we are going to kind of get to see them more. But, I definitely agree with everything Brian said, and I think that'll connect to how I feel about the shows as a whole. But before that, Savon, what were your thoughts? You were the coldest one on the show.
Yeah, Jonathan Majors was good. I enjoyed him. It was a great setup for Kang. I enjoyed that. But ultimately, to Brian's point, like the last episode just ended up being half of it was just an exposition dump. Like, let's just call it what it is. And I'm never really a fan of a show just ending with a long exposition dump. I'm just not really into that. But again, Jonathan Majors stole the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing him play Kang. But overall, the ending was kind of to me because it was an exposition dump. I didn't really like Sylvie to begin with, and honestly, she just became less interesting as the show went on. So the conclusion with her, because at first I was like, oh, this is dope, and then literally each episode I lost interest in her. The whole Loki Sylvie thing I was never into, so just all of those scenes to me just felt like wasted time. So I don't know. The ending was kind of aight to me. Honestly, it's funny because we're going to get to this, but I preferred the setup more than the actual events that happened because I just wasn't really into. Yeah, I think I didn't really like the story that much.
Not a problem. I think I see where you guys are coming from on that. For me personally, I loved every minute of it. There was nothing that I didn't like about the ending. There's nothing I didn't really like about the show, except maybe Ravonna Renslayer a little bit, like I mentioned a couple shows ago. So I just wanted to put that out there for anybody listening who felt like it was great. You and me are in the same boat. These three guys, I guess, maybe we're in the wrong boat. Maybe they're in the right boat. Who knows? So we wanted to zoom out. Disney and Marvel have had a chance now to put out 3 shows. Their first kind of foray into this idea of, well, let's expand the Marvel Cinematic Universe through television episodes, and episodic storytelling. I'd imagine some of that is like they're going to get more eyeballs. Some of that is like they're giving their fans more of a way, us fans, more of a way to stay connected to the universe and keep it kind of front of mind. It also gives them a chance to explore more in depth some of these stories that they want to tell, characters that they want to highlight, and that way they can fold them into movies later on, sell more merch. It's really all about selling the merch at the end of the day. And I just want to know from you guys, now that we've sort of seen 3 of their efforts, right? We've seen WandaVision, we've seen the Falcon, the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and now we're finishing up with Loki here before we roll into the next few set of shows. Where do we stand? What do we think about this kind of different effort of storytelling?
Can I go first? Because I think the way I feel about this is also going to connect to the way I felt about the last Loki episode. So Brian said it, and I'm not going to reiterate it, but the last Loki episode almost wasn't even a Loki episode. For me, it solely served the function of actually now seriously setting up the MCU as a whole. And I think for a lot of people, that's really what we thought the shows were going to be. Like, a lot of people, even before the very first show, WandaVision, came out, said like, oh, this is going to be an extended trailer for the Doctor Strange movie. So going into these shows, I really thought that it was going to be like really diving into like the lore and the side characters, and then using that as an interesting way to set up everything else. Now, I liked the last episode of Loki because I am interested in, now I'm like really hyped for like, what is Kang going to do? What are all these different versions of Kang going to do? But that's only like really 20 minutes there, and then the very end of WandaVision that connect to anything at the end. So her like reading that book, and now she's kind of ascended to this Scarlet Witch character, right? So the shows, especially Falcon and the Winter Soldier, besides like that serving as his origin story, largely didn't really do what I was hoping they would do and what I expected them to do, which was to like serve as like a jumping off point for the next phase of the movies. They did accomplish that at the end, but so much of what came before those like climaxes of the show didn't really accomplish that. Now, WandaVision, I think, was good. We all liked that story. They told it in a unique way, and we were bought into it. I think we can all agree Falcon and Winter Soldier didn't do as good a job with that. And then Loki was a whole story that kind of just got flipped on its head at the very end to now connect to the bigger picture of what's going on. So I guess like for me and everybody else, I'm feeling like is probably going to talk about a bit of Marvel fatigue, and then especially kind of how the actual content of Marvel has kind of led to this fatigue, which is interesting. But overall, kind of cool.
I think it's for me, I think it's still a little bit too early to tell if this is the best way for Marvel to tell its stories.
Which is crazy because we have like 18 episodes. There's not a shortage of content.
Yeah. I think maybe it's possible that, maybe they just haven't quite found the formula they need for television series, right? Like they know how to make really great movies now. Maybe they're still finding their feet on how to do television production. I think they've certainly taken a lot of risks. They've certainly put a lot of money behind it and hired really talented people. And when you hire talented people and you give them experience, like you're going to get good stuff. It just may not be the first effort that's always going to be like, dropping the hammer on you. Sometimes it is, right? And sometimes it's not. And I think that's okay. I think there's a real possibility though that we're getting into this like not danger zone, but this weird anti-productivity here for them that I'm personally feeling a little bit like MCU, like you said, fatigued. We've gotten a new show every month, and I personally was hyped for that. I was really excited for that, but now I'm kind of like, I don't really want to watch Disney Plus right now because like I don't want to see Mandalorian or Marvel movies come across. Like I want to go try something that's different and just outside of that world and see new storytellers. So I do think there's like a little bit of a fine line that they're going to have to walk here of like not overwhelming us with so much MCU stuff that we don't have a chance to actually build up the anticipation and get ready for the next thing. We're used to seeing Marvel movies every maybe 4 months, 6 months, something like that at a normal pace. But now there's no breaks. I mean, the most time you're off from something Marvel is like 3 weeks.
And then that makes like when the plot isn't directly driving to something or fall flat, that kind of doubles that effect, right? Because it's just like, it's not even like, oh, well, at least it's a movie. Like I waited a long time. It's just you have constant shit thrown at your head. And if it's not really engaging and cool and unique, it very much can kind of fall by the wayside.
Yeah, we're sort of in this period of glut, right? Where we know superheroes, we know the genre. We've been doing this for well over a decade at this point, and we know the MCU style of it. All the jokey characters, the infighting but amongst teammates, all this stuff. It's almost as if the MCU has its own array of tropes that they now have to constantly combat every time a new piece of product comes out. And so it's kind of surprising that we've gotten 3 MCU shows already in this year, and there's still 2 more to come. Like Hawkeye, I'm so surprised to learn that it's coming in November. I was like, already? And we're getting Shang-Chi in September, and we're getting the Eternals in November. So it's almost as
and
if...
What If is still coming?
We're getting
I don't
What
really
If
count
in,
What If,
in
though.
August.
No? Okay.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if any of the What If stories are going to tie into the MCU or not.
I don't think so.
Because I think there's a chance if any of those individual episodes, if one of the variant, they're probably going to be considered like a variant type character. Yeah. If it hits well with audiences, they will find a way to tie it into something greater. Trust that. And so we're just like on the hamster wheel of the MCU, like constantly just like trying to sip from the water feeder that they keep giving to us, and because they want to chain all these things together, it's kind of a detriment to all the storytelling, right? Like they kind of can't tell new and interesting stories each time to keep us hooked because they're constantly setting up the next thing in each one of these TV shows. And I think Loki episode 6 is a great example of that. Monica Rambeau and like and Renslayer and all these dangling characters whose arcs never completed in their seasons. All this stuff is hanging in the air, and it's like, oh, why can't we just have like a nice unit of something, a TV show unto itself. It doesn't necessarily need to, portend to the big future that MCU has planned for, years down the road and whatever. Like, just tell a good story. I think we're at that point in all this superhero stuff that, they have the room for that. To be interesting and unique might actually be not doing the MCU thing, and going against the grain in that direction. And part of me, I just, I long for the days of Daredevil on Netflix. That was like such a great Marvel Universe TV show.
Jessica Jones.
It was finite. Jessica Jones is also a big favorite. I mean, the only problems with those shows is that they were too long. They had too many episodes. But if they had the same budget that the current Disney Plus shows are getting, with the caliber of talent, but willing to do something in an isolated way, with only hints of the greater universe, I think the product would be far better.
So I know, Savon, you want to go. I was just going to comment on that part. So it seems to me like, and Mike was confused. I just typed in the chat. This is like the wag the dog situation. So it's a saying, right? The tail's wagging the dog. That like in politics, it means like you're letting like polling data and, you know, whatever's like popular guide your decisions rather than doing what is right or setting up like the long-term, like actually sound thing. And so I think, Brian, it sounds like your criticism is like it's becoming like too obvious that everything is sort of like setting up the next thing, and that's actually determining story rather than telling a good story and kind of building naturally off of where that leads. Like sometimes they're sort of putting themselves into these boxes where they need to drop some hints. They need to drop in the Monica Rambeau so that we can get to the next one. And it was like my criticism of like why Ahsoka was in that one episode, but then just left. Like why introduce this like cool character and have her do really cool things and then not bring her back at all in the show. And it's like, oh, because we want to set up the next show. It's like, well, but that didn't serve the story that we're currently watching. Is that sort of where you're going?
Absolutely.
That's where most of my disappointment, and Savon, you can close this out, but like just real quick, that's where most of my disappointment comes. Because I've said this a lot of times, you know, prior to the shows, was that what I thought Disney had finally gotten through their head is if you give like the creative control to people that are really passionate, they're going to make a good product, and then that's going to sell really well. And it looks like that's what The Mandalorian did. Like that's what the end of the Clone Wars did. That's what Infinity War and Endgame certainly did. Like this now seems a lot more focus group driven and like a lot of just like business guys sitting around in an office, like writing an album or writing a show. You know what I mean? And that's where a lot of my heartbreak is for these shows, is it does seem like we've taken a big step backwards in terms of giving creative control to people that are really passionate about these stories and letting them make the best product possible.
All right, well, that's interesting because I actually have a decent amount of pushback on some of that. I think the biggest one is that, well, one, thinking about the recent shows, I agree with the general point about there maybe being a little bit of bloat. Like, that's not incorrect. I think, one, you just got to own, like, COVID messed up a lot of production and release schedules. And a bunch of these shows we know weren't coming out on the intended timeline. So, like, that is something that's having influences even now, right, of production schedules and even, like, Delta variant stuff. So you can't ignore that impacts all this and kind of use that to put this into context.
Wear your mask, people.
So
go get vaccinated.
That's part of it. So I do try to keep that in mind when I'm harboring criticism about release dates, because that messed over a bunch of people. I think your point about the shows spending too much time trying to set up for others, I really do think that's kind of an overblown complaint at this point, like if I'm going to really be honest. And I think the point about
going straight for the throat.
And I think when it comes to self-contained stories, I think both of those things, if you actually look back, they're not as guilty of it as we think they are. And we talked about this in the pre-time before we started recording. I mentioned that Marvel has, since all their stuff has been coming out, has always inserted Easter eggs and references to other characters and other conflicts. Putting in a reference, in my opinion, doesn't really impact the larger writing of what that story was going to bring. This was my pushback, Wes, about your point about Ahsoka. You might have been disappointed to introduce her and didn't bring her back, but if she had been a one-off bit character, which was also a thing within The Mandalorian, that doesn't really take away from what she still had to contribute story-wise. So you can, like, there is a line of doing both, but I don't think we should assume just because we reference something else that automatically meant that would have impacted the larger story. Like WandaVision, again, great story. Did it do some setup for Multiverse of Madness? Sure. I don't think any of that impacted how the actual story went and what we got to see in the development. I think same happened with, honestly, Falcon and Winter Soldier. Like, those shows had flaws and things you could hold against them. I don't really think them tying into the larger world took away from the actual story they were trying to tell. You know, I think Ant-Man 2 was a self-contained story. Honestly, the Ant-Man movies are generally pretty self-contained. A lot of the Thor movies were pretty self-contained. I think we overblow a bit character or a post-credit scene as thinking, oh, that just took over the whole movie, when a lot of these movies in a vacuum, you take that bit out, it doesn't change what you got. So I don't want us to just let ourselves be a victim of, oh, we see a trope and then just assume the worst in regards to what it could mean for something. That being said, they're going to have to iron out maybe the writing for some of these shows. And again, production affects this. But I do think the TV shows, and this is someone who prefers the TV style format to movie format just conceptually, these actors just get more screen time, and we've gotten the best acting out of them since. Like I think we've gotten the best MCU performances out of the TV shows and the movies. I enjoyed seeing Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, Elizabeth Olsen, your boy who plays Vision. I'm forgetting the actor's name.
Paul Bettany.
Thank you.
The Vision.
Like a bunch of those characters, even Loki. Like was I crazy about Loki as a whole? Not really. That I love that he just got time to act. Hell yeah, and that's going to be the biggest advantage these TV shows have. They can iron out the writing and get better, but either way, let the actors act. Let them work. Like Don Cheadle's going to have a show. Don Cheadle's going to crush it because he's Don Cheadle. So if you give me more hours of time with Don Cheadle on the screen, I promise you that's going to be better than an hour and a half of him supporting another character. Like just
Space Jam 2. I got a movie for you.
So, I don't know. It was something. I agree with some of y'all larger points, but don't get. I don't think you should get too caught up in their character references stuff being a bad
This
thing.
is not how I was expecting this conversation to go.
Just keeping it a buck 50.
That's cool. Hey, it goes where it goes. I mean, I do really like the idea of like somen and miso ramen conceptually more than like the tsukamen ramen. So, I really get that.
What?
Brian, what you got?
What are you talking about today, man?
Wes, do you need to go eat? Or
What is going
go to the
on?
bathroom
Are
or
you
something?
okay?
Don't ever
Take a
accuse me of
moment.
being high.
I will
'Cause
say
Savon,
though that
Savon was like, I prefer the idea of TV conceptually more than movies.
I think it's a better
conceptually." Just like,
format.
that's
I
an
think that's a
absurd
fair.
statement.
Why?
No,
I think it's very.
Why?
Look, Wes, we don't have to go super hard in, but at its core, TV gives you more dialogue and more character development time. I think an hour and a half constrains what you can get away with, and it leads to things that I don't like about movies as a whole, even though obviously they are great movies.
Wait till I tell you about 3-hour-long Marvel movies, because they exist and will continue to exist.
Oh my goodness. All right, Brian, finish this out.
I will say one thing I do very much agree with is that Don Cheadle is amazing, and if they even just did Don Cheadle as Iron Patriot in a room by himself for 6 episodes, he
Like
would
a
kill
one-man
it.
show, that'd be kind of
It would
cool.
be
Maybe they should go
incredible.
into that. Well, he's
Go
getting
bold,
a show.
go
so
bold, or go home, Marvel.
he's getting a show, which I'm very excited for. So
One
maybe
man
I'll be
improv
disappointed.
show.
I mean, that there's a lot you could do with that character, and the man could act. So
No doubt about it. Should we close up there? Any last thoughts? I loved it.
You need to go eat something, drink some water. I think that's my last thought.
Conceptually, I like the idea of ending the show.
Y'all are not about to do this to me. This is not about to be a thing.
All right. Let's end it there. Let us know what you think about our new recurring segment, Shit Mike Hates. I think I loved it. Socials, Instagram, Twitter, @confidently_pod. Alexis, if you're listening in about 4 or 5 months, whenever you get to this episode, we need a social media manager. So feel free to hit me up. I'll give you the password and you can just take over for us. Don't forget to visit all of our sponsors. ZennyOptical.com. You can get your glasses customized like Savon has, Captain Vonnie on the side. They didn't pay us anything. Savon just loves his turtle horn. I don't know, what do you call it? Shell horn? Something like that?
Tortoise.
Glasses.
What are you talking
Tortoise shell?
about?
There we go.
Just
There we
tortoise.
go.
Real
What is
endangered
wrong with
species
you?
stuff.
We've been doing this for a while now. It's
Clearly,
words.
someone has drip and someone doesn't.
I have no drip, guys. That's for sure. We're out of here. Have a great one.
You have furniture.
I've been here 2 years.
Plastic
Oh, no,
furniture.
1 year.
You have furniture and a home and a wife and a dog.
Yeah, but
He also has 2 bathrums.
and 2 bathrooms.
Never forget. Never
double
forget.
sinks. I got double sinks.
Oh,
Double
his and hers
sinks.
looking at.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Y'all go brush each other's teeth in the morning and give each other affirmations and kisses on the forehead.
We need a musical hit for this one, man. I think this is a good one for like shit
Shit
might
Mike's
hate.
Hey, yeah, like a old game show type of vibe. Yeah.
Yeah.